the reason why we do have him here today is to speak on the crisis that we are facing as an industry, and that is on inclusion and diversity. And so, Mike, you're someone who has an incredible history of working actively in this area. You're a part of the Diversity Action Alliance, which you recently stepped down. Of where we are today, are you able to sort of give us an overview of why we're here now in this crisis that we are facing in diversity?
Well, thank you so much. I think the short answer for why we're in this crisis of diversity today is because we've had well-educated, well-trained senior executives of color who did not get the same opportunity of their white counterparts. And that didn't just start today, that's happened for probably at least 2 generations, meaning from post-World War II to today, in our industry. And then we have to look historically at why that might be. My analysis and my background is heavy in the area of intelligence gathering and op research. So I've been studying this for a while. Obviously, PR is a subset of advertising. The advertising industry really took hold 40s, 50s, as again, post-World War II, about the same time that the PR business was really taking hold. And it was designed by white men for white male client decision makers. But then we wonder why the system isn't working well for executives of color. So what does that mean? Might frighten some people. That means that the paradigm and the system needs to be blown up. It needs to be looked at from a very different perspective. And one of the things I want to start with from the very top that is breaking news, as an example, is I'm soon, later today, going to make public that I'm asking for every single board in our business. When I say our business, that's corporations, that is associations, and advertising, marketing, and PR across the board of every kind, agencies included, asking for 1/3 of those board seats to now be given voluntarily as soon as possible to executives of color. You heard some examples in corporate America of white executives now voluntarily saying, I'm not waiting until my board seat term is up. Today, I resign. I want to best help. My seat should go to somebody else. This isn't a board that is suddenly now going to flip to 100% executives of color. We're light years, sadly, away from that. We're asking for 1/3. Why? Because on average, that's the demographics of which we operate, of which organizations of all kinds in the world, especially in the United States, serve. It's not too big a number. So if you got 30 people sitting on a board, 10 of those seats now, you should be asking proactively yourself and your peers, who's willing to give up seats to make room for us to be better and different. And as McKinsey says, to also make on average 1/3 more money when you do diversity, equality, and inclusion from a best practices approach.
And because you just noted there at the end on the McKinsey report, there it really does outline a really clear reason on the business side of why action needs to be taken fast. And I wonder to you, if you put that case forward to different organizations, and then here in our case in the PR industry, what can you do if they're still resistant despite seeing the evidence, which is really clear, as an example in this piece of research?
Excellent question. McKinsey's been doing that report now for more than 5 years. We've known this as evidence. We still are in meetings where people say, hey, let's just try and raise awareness. Hey, let's have a panel discussion about this. Hey, where can I read and find out more information? The top 100 firms in our industry, in advertising and PR, got that first report from me and my firm emailed in a PDF to the CEO and C-suites of those organizations 5 years ago. The top 100 and the Fortune 500 also got it from me 5 years ago. And they get updates when it comes out. So what does that mean? You can't say you didn't know. That's the first thing, right? And most of them know I've been working on this issue pro bono for 25 years. I'm not a diversity and equality and inclusion expert. I'm not even a racial crisis expert. I'm a crisis guy at the top of the key. And this is such a big issue for every organization. I've dove in 25 years ago to work on things. The 4As, what is the 4As? The 4As is the association of the largest advertising conglomerates in the world. They were my client. I saw their files. I know how big the problem is. So when you speak to me, I'm speaking to you as a peer. And I'm saying this as though I'm speaking to the CEO of an advertising or a PR firm right now. And as we know, still the majority of PR firms are owned by advertising conglomerates. That's why it's so important to understand that. They can't hire a CEO of a PR firm that's owned by an advertising conglomerate. They can't spend more than $250,000 without having their boss's boss approve it. For a senior VP or an EVP that's coming in, they can't hire them without the advertising conglomerate being in the loop. So when you're in a meeting and they say, "Oh, I'm very committed to this, and we're going to get the dollars together," talking about, you're not the ultimate decision maker. I'm still going to talk to your boss. And they look at me, "Why are you going to do that?" Because I understand how it works. They were my clients. I know who they are. We're a peer. Why does that make you uncomfortable? Why does it make you uncomfortable when I ask questions like, "What are your numbers?" Especially if you're a diversity recruitment specialist for an advertising conglomerate or a global PR firm. I'm not supposed to be asking you what your numbers are, how many people you recruited this year. Why is that offensive? Think about the paradigm we must have created for that to be seen as so. I'm a troublemaker because I asked what your numbers are? Are you kidding me? It's ridiculous. So the answer to the question is, there will be good pressure and good trouble, as they say in the civil rights movement, by there being pressure from clients that now say things like, "Can't have just five white guys walking into a meeting, guys." Our stakeholders and our shareholders are telling us we can't do that. There are shareholders of color who are holding us accountable for everything we do now. There are also white executives who understand that there's money to be made in various communities of color and having different levels of expertise at the table that you don't understand. We're not allowing that anymore. So the pressure is starting to come in from clients. The pressure is also coming from the accountability, especially through social media, of people being much more comfortable of asking what some think are difficult questions. They're just intelligent questions. They're questions that are tied to research and an understanding of how to find a solution.
And you're mentioning about the demand for hiring people of color at the exec level. You've been really strong with your lobbying, especially in recent weeks, and it's actually drew some action from some top world PR firms. I'd be interested to hear sort of just more on that front, and what are your three biggest goals in that piece of work you're doing?
Well, so the lobbying effort obviously kicked up, sadly, since we've had the civil rights movement all over the world, with people being more open to hearing about concerns, especially of Black folks. I saw that as an opportunity to have very different conversations with pressure with the CEOs of advertising conglomerates, the CEOs of top agencies, and the CEOs of corporations. And I'm having many conversations over the course of each day with them, lobbying one by one, not counting on any association of any kind to help them make that decision, and it's starting to bear fruit. And it also includes some of the things that they've done well, but also some of the things that they haven't done. So, for example, I'm very proud to say that 5 major PR agencies have flipped, meaning they've made a commitment to my pledge, my proposal, not the Diversity Action Alliance proposal, not some other proposal. And it's very simple, my pledge. Are you committed? By the way, this is a 25-year-old pledge. And they all know it, because I've been talking to them that long. But now, because of pressure, society, in the public, ironically, as we work in public relations, to do so. And the pledge is this: will you commit transparently and publicly, with accountability, to agree to hire at least a minimum of one senior executive of color, VP level or above, into your agency by 2022? That's the ask. 5 said yes. They are Weber Shandwick, Golan, Current Global, which are all IPG firms under the leadership of Michael Roth, and underneath him, Andy Polanski, and 3 great CEOs that all agreed yes. Jim Josephs of Burson, Cohen and Wolf, BCW, who is also the head of PR Council, which is a big association here in the States of the biggest PR firms, and medium-sized and small, but really people work with.
Yeah.
They agreed as well. And Richard Edelman, the #1 firm in the world, has also agreed at Edelman Public Relations. I then asked them, is there an opportunity now that you have made these decisions within your own holding company to get sister agencies to also join? So, for example, Hill & Knowlton is a WPP firm, just like BCW. Can you help influence them to do the same, and others in WPP? And the same thing in IPG, and the same thing in Omnicom and others. That's part of the strategy. We're hoping to get a tipping point where hundreds say, we want to be on the right side of history. This isn't going away. This isn't going to be something like the protest that stops tomorrow. This ask is there. Your clients are learning about it. That's also influencing them. It's a top-down and a bottom-up with your clients. We're telling them that we're asking for them to do this. So corporations and major brands and marketers are saying, Mike, we're with you. And we're just getting started.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges is with the movement in our industry, but also just across society in the sense that it has to be a top-down movement, really, because the bottom and the middle have been, for the most part, have been pushing for these sort of things to be happening, at least in my experience, but it's always the challenge is to get the top to make the change. Got a question here from Paul. What time scale do you want to put on the third? Which is from an earlier point you made.
As soon as possible. I mean, the pressure starts today. And I will say this, that any agency or any corporation that is even just considering it gets credit by at least texting me or giving me a phone call to say, hey, we heard you and we're talking about it. By the way, that's the best approach to handle any crisis, by the way. Most people don't do that. I utilize it with my clients all the time. Instead of saying nothing, right, and you're having internal discussions that could be positive, push back on the attorney that says, no, we can't say that. What are you talking about? In the court of public opinion, there's the perception that you're ignoring them. If you're having good discussions about potentially doing it, why would you not at least put out a communication that says, we're currently discussing it, we'll have more news soon? You didn't say what you're even going to do, but at least people know that you're discussing it.
Yep.
You get credit for that.
Absolutely. And because you've obviously had a lot of experience across the world, so you're really well versed in different cultural challenges and to be able to make change. But if we reflect on the UK industry here, what can we do as making these changes? Because some of the different challenges are quite different. The population is a different makeup as well. What would your advice be for the big firms, but also the medium size as well?
We are much more similar than people think. And I think sometimes we put culture in the way as an excuse. And when I'm in meetings, I try and speak from an EQ perspective and a loving perspective. I'm not just a grizzly bear, I'm a teddy bear. And there's a time right now for there to be many more teddy bears to be able to say in a different way, this is uncomfortable for me. That's what a person's really saying when they say things like that. It scares me, some of the changes that might be coming. Am I still going to be a part of the system? Am I, as a white man, for example, going to be thrown away? No, you're not. But if you're of Indian descent, or you're of African descent, or you're of any type of immigrant that is now in the UK, or you were born there, and you're Black, or you're Latino, or you're Asian, do you see your fellow citizen as other or less than in your heart? Let's be serious and let's be honest. Or do you see them as an equal peer in your industry and just as a citizen? You could have a knee-jerk reaction and simply say, of course I do. I could tell you the research, and I use a lot of psychology in what I do. The research doesn't bet that out. The average person is uncomfortable with someone that is other. I challenge it every day. I utilize it in my practice every single day. And I'm usually doing it to a very strong, powerful white man who is hired to help with his organization or his corporation. And I start by wanting to get to know his family. Come to the barbecue. Come meet my wife. Oh man, you know what I'm supposed to be doing on a Saturday as we're in the middle of a crisis discussion? My wife's texting me, I haven't been to my son's baseball game in 3 years. I go, dude, let's go. What? Get in the car. How far is it from here? Well, we're Midtown Manhattan right now. You know, I live in Connecticut. Oh, so we got an hour and a half to talk and do what we're doing now in the car? Do you know what your son's face is going to look like when dad shows up? Because he's been branded that you don't care and you're never going to show up. Dude, we're going to the game. Change his life with his son by going to one game. Mom, look, Dad's here. Oh my gosh, Dad's here. I do this to him. I go, what's that? He's pretty awesome. And he didn't know what to do next. He's like, oh, what do I do? Dude, he's up the bat. He's like, hit a good one, son. Hit a good one. I had to teach him how to have emotional intelligence with his own son. And then when we got back in the car, I said, Mom, I got to stir your heart a little bit. You can't do that with yourself. There's absolutely no way you can do that with an employee. There's absolutely no way that you can, you don't have the experience. You have to utilize these heart skills versus head skills to understand somebody else. And the biggest skill set we're supposed to be utilizing in our industry is to understand a different stakeholder other than us so well that clients pay us to know how. You just prove that you're not good at it. So you have to do work at it. You got to go again and consider to work in your relationship with your son. And I guarantee you, the more you work in your relationship with your son, you're also going to learn other people in a different way, understand who they are. You're going to ask questions of someone that's other than you and your company, just simply, hey, how's your family? How's your wife? You don't think that matters to someone that's walking in the hallway? Or you're on a Zoom call with and you're just waiting for people to get on? It matters. Harold Burson was my mentor. I'll give you an example. I had many mentors, but he was one of my greatest. When I learned that Harold Burson, and I just started talking about this, I've known this for years, but we kept it a secret. Much of our relationship was a secret about that. I asked it to be that way. When I learned that my boss's boss, who put me in a management training program in 1992 and handpicked me to be in this firm, I'd heard that people were talking behind my back after I helped win a piece of business to come into the firm, and they were jealous, and they were saying things like, who does that N think he is? You know what N stands for? Screw him. Not we just want a big account. Not wow, that's terrific. That's good for all of us. So when Mr. Burson heard about it, he didn't call me in his office and say, hey, this is happening right now. He instantly wanted to know who it was that said that and went to their space, either their office or their cube, and said, I have to hear that again. I found out months later from his assistant, Mr. Burson, do you think I didn't bust my butt and think of him like a grandpa after that? You know what pride I had that I didn't have to do all those fights myself? Somebody was doing it for me that had my back. That's what not mentorship, but sponsorship is. And by the way, we're sick of teaching. This is going to sound direct. White professionals how to do these things for people of color, especially at the mid-level and the entry level. We've spent decades and decades saying, help us, teach us. You guys got to be there with us too. No, we don't. This is how you solve it. 1/3 of us on the board, more senior executives in the C-suite, running practices, running offices. I'm teaching young people the things that you're supposed to be telling them every day. So do you know that you can be the general manager of this New York office? Has anyone told you about those jobs that you should have in your eye? You know you could be a national practice head, a global practice head in your specialty? Do you know that you can run the East Coast or the West Coast or the mid-United States? Do you know that you can be the country leader in the UK for your area of expertise? There's all kind of boss jobs. And the question is, why is no one doing that? How are you going to see in your mind's eye that you even have permission to have that goal if you don't even have these discussions with and CSS peers? So we're doing it now. So if we're at the table, we don't have to teach you. We're gonna demonstrate it in front of you. You're gonna learn to by action, not us teaching you and then you do it when we're supposed to. And not one or two people at the board, not one or two people in an executive position. By the way, the research shows that that's gone on since the 80s, some in the 70s, but they leave. They leave because the culture isn't accepting of who they are holistically as just a human being. So we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And I was listening actually to you speak the other week, and you said something that's really stayed with me since, and that was the moment that you say diversity at the mid-level, entry-level, junior positions, and that alone, then that's offensive. As a white person myself, or any other mid-level people, if we're not seeing something in our organization that we're not liking, but there is that perceived threat of if I do speak up, if I do anything to stir the pot, I could be out, I could be in a bad position. What would you say to people like me in my position or anyone else in that boat? What can they do?
Excellent question. I think the Harold Burson example is probably, so there's three big things. The first is mirror what Harold Burson did for me. When you are in the room, especially alone, and I'm not there, and me being a person of color, an executive of color, or even an intern, you hear someone saying, why are we wasting our time? This is BS. We get back to work. When is this stuff going to be over? What that person is really saying, inappropriately with prejudice, is I'm uncomfortable. Are you uncomfortable like me? Now, if you put your head down and don't say something, you're being complicit. One of the reasons why Dr. King, even in the civil rights movement, said we need to be more concerned about those sitting on the sidelines, right, doing nothing, just as bad or worse than those that are speaking directly to us with hate. So your job is, in a meeting, in society as a citizen or in a business or anywhere, when you hear that, you instantaneously have prepared to be an advocate in the moment. John, please don't speak that way around me, as an example. I just won't tolerate it. It's offensive. And, continues, I'm just going to have to leave.
Yeah.
You say that in the meeting, or if you say that to your friend, by the way, some of this, most of this, is learned in families. You've learned some of this since you're a child. So if you even say it to your family, let me tell you, it has amazing power. And the white privilege that you have is then utilized in a powerful way to your white peer to say, stop that. And I don't think you're going to be fired. I think that there's a fear that it won't be accepted. And what your intestinal fortitude has to be greater than that is I must. I can't look at my colleagues, my friends. Some people have interracial families now, my own family, and not speak up.
And I think about speaking up, I found, especially on social media, at the moment, there is a real desire for, I can speak for myself, for people who are white, who their way of feeling like they're doing something is to go on Twitter and tweet out a few little comments, and then that makes them feel better. They also feel like, okay, at least I'm now saying I don't accept the current situation. But I feel like when people do that, there is a real trap where it's just an echo chamber, especially on Twitter, where you're really just shouting to people who agree with you. And so the message isn't actually getting to where it needs to go. I was just curious to get your view on the use of social media, both for our industry, but also for Black Lives Matter as a movement. It does seem that there's almost this too much overemphasis on social media rather than let's get some actually real action done. Just thought, just get your take on that.
So first, my view of social media overall, and what I tell my clients, social media is media today. It's been that for 10 years. Not some aside, it's not some small thing. You understand that 65% of all things that are read in news come from Facebook alone. You understand its power, okay? There are a lot of senior executives who do not understand these tools well enough. They do not understand their power. They have people that work for them who do, but they do not. I counsel them every single day. If you don't know how to use these tools, then you're not in our business. And when you say things like, I want to be in the Wall Street Journal or USA Today or The Guardian before I get a major story out, and I say, what's the ultimate thing you're trying to do? Trying to have targeted communication with various stakeholder groups, right? Yes. And I just showed you that 4 million people just got impacted by that message. Why are you still talking about branding of a particular TV show? You sound like you're in the 60s. It's 2020. What are you doing? That's what happens every day. Now we throw in our issue. Social media is changing the world. It's impactful. It helped elect a president, several presidents in our country. Some people use it inappropriately. Some people use it appropriately. They're targeting it because they understand the tool better than you. And as a government, you're not investing in the education of understanding how to stop bad people. But when you see a video like today and yesterday of people marching everywhere in the world, and you might be too busy to watch it on your TV, but you open up your Facebook, or you open up Instagram, or you open up a Twitter, just for 5 seconds, and the story is they're marching everywhere, and it's going to be a hot summer, and the election is this fall, and there's a march on Washington planned, and this doesn't look like it's going away, you better believe it. So when you say, what can I do? It starts with self. Tens of millions of people every single day, if they started with themselves to say, what can I do? So can I step down from a board seat and give it to someone of color? Can I personally help more executives of color and anyone of color to get a job? And now I have to give another very important message about what's going on. And this is making people cry, including white male executives that are here. Mike, I want to do more. We're thinking about signing the pledge. And I say, do you know the people that work for you right now? Before we talk about bringing in more, you have stuff. My research says you have 2% or 5% or less than 10% people of color of all levels, including interns, paid and unpaid workers. Yes. Okay. Here's the test. You learn that the coronavirus, the pandemic, has impacted communities of color all over the world, greater than white folks. Yes. When you first heard about the pandemic, you thought about your immediate family like any human being did. Absolutely. Is my son safe? Is my wife safe? What's our home plan? We're going to have an internal conversation about how we handle it. Great. Your other family are your employees, are they not? Yes. Did you call anybody of color that works for you when you learn that the demographics of the trauma and crisis they're going through is different than you? And it includes grandma or grandpa might have died, their parents might have died. That's what the statistics say. You read them. But you didn't go, oh my God, get me the phone numbers and the list of every person of color that works for me. We got to start calling people to make sure they're okay. And we don't have relationships with them. And I have to have high EQ right now and start forming relationships in the midst of trauma to find out when they're not comfortable telling me because I don't know them, but I have a responsibility, just like a president calls a family of someone that died at war. The war is the pandemic virus is killing your family, the people that work for you, and you didn't put together a GoFundMe campaign to help them. You didn't call them to find out, is their family okay? You didn't find out even if they were sick at home right now. You didn't find out if they had enough money to bury somebody. I get those texts and phone calls. But can you contribute? What's going on? So-and-so at XYZ firm had his father die. Doesn't have he's crying. He doesn't have the money there. He can't focus on work. He's afraid of losing his job because he can't sleep. He doesn't know what to do. Doesn't have the money. Boss doesn't know. Boss doesn't know. Why doesn't the boss know? Let me call this person. Dude, my boss doesn't know me. Let's start with that. He's laying off people. What are you talking about? I'm afraid of losing my job. If I call him. Am I a troublemaker by telling him the truth that members of my family have the coronavirus? Then I talk to some executives and they say, okay, so we're going to take care of that household, and then who's the grandma? She's got another house. She lives somewhere else, right? I said, follow the data. Read it and think as though it's your family. Some of them are living in the same house. Some of them are babysitting the kids for them to work for you. Auntie, grandma, not always, but some. You have to understand stakeholder relations better than that to understand you needed to know that. I shouldn't be teaching you that. So we're still seen as other, we're still seen as less than, and worse. Many of these organizations don't have any relationship with their own people, and they're dying and they're sick.
Well, I think that's the issue in a lot of different organizations in different industries, is that the leadership is quite old school in the sense that it's quite cold approach. So they don't want to make relationships with their people. It's management style, which has had success if you look in some places, but how do we overcome that aspect? What tangible things can we put in place? Is a sponsorship to sort of ensure that the people at the higher level then feel invested in a person of color who's coming up the ranks. So eventually we actually start moving people. There is a pathway for people to take. Is that one of the answers to ensuring that we can actually, for people who maybe it's not their style, to be personable, to care on an emotional level? What can we do to encourage them, almost force their hand to adopting
Well, the force their hand goes back to the study, and you guys should put the link in for everyone to see it. And the latest diversity study by McKinsey includes the previous one, which is great. They do a great job of it. So the best practices approach, I believe, is best from McKinsey. That's your Bible for, I want to change my organization. I'm adding to that Bible by talking about 1/3 of the boards got to go. And if you really want to be proactive to help, you got to empty seats. You can't continue to sit in the same seats and expect change. In the McKinsey report, it talks about something that's very crucial to any successful best practices approach, diversity, equality, and inclusion program that you're instituting globally within your organization. And that includes accountability at every level and transparency at every level. So number one, how many people do we have? There are organizations that aren't even releasing that. You see one major conglomerate, IPG, I applaud them for doing so, not only agreed to hire more senior executives of color, they released proactively their numbers at every level who are people of color. You got to define the problem first to solve it. Then you hold people accountable. So says McKinsey as well, which means if you are being paid now, let's say in sales, for doing your job, meeting targets, having the salary that you have, and also the bonus tied to sales, the same thing. By the way, this is not a new idea. This has been going on since the 80s in some corporations around the world, not just here in the US. That you're held accountable to every review, the same way for sales, from hitting your diversity mark. If you are someone that hires people, and there are people that are hiring people even below the VP level who have the responsibility of hiring people, certainly VP or above, everybody in an organization has this responsibility. And if you find out that people are racist and they don't want to do it, you got to fire them. How come you're not hitting your numbers here? Yeah, but my skills are through the roof. Remember, I'm one of the top sales guys. I had a client years ago with a black CEO of a Fortune 100 company. When he came in, he said, new rules apply to everything that we're talking about, the diversity report from McKinsey, back in the 90s. A top salesperson, as an example, was fired in less than 3 months. Was spreading word of mouth and poisoning the well all over the world by saying, gone. And let people know when he was gone as an example. Oh my God, did you hear? Tom's gone. Tom's gone? Oh yeah, isn't he a top sales guy? New rules, man.
Yeah.
How do you do it? With accountability. As though it's your child that you're protecting to make sure that this is done well. As though it's your wife. As though it's yourself as a person of color. That's what you got to put in your head and in your heart to institute. What we've had in past that you were describing were what I call CYA campaigns, cover your ass campaigns, campaigns that said, we'll give a few $1,000. We'll hire a diversity and inclusion specialist who works in HR. That'll be covered. We'll get a couple of interns and a couple of lower level people, or someone mid-level. Don't talk about senior executives. Shh. A couple of people mid-level. We'll make sure we announce it publicly. That's a CYA campaign. We're going on for 2 generations. What's happening now, the pressure that is being applied now, you can't do that anymore. Someone's going to talk about it. Someone's going to make it public. You're at risk if you do that. The old rules are gone. And to nurture someone at any level means you don't just give them a job. You teach them, or they ask you because they learn, well, what kind of budget do I have? Thanks for bringing me in. What's my budget? How many people can I hire? Can I bring my assistant from my past job who knows me well, who's going to help me and be my left arm in what I'm doing? Can I hire 10 people? Can I hire 12 people? I'm teaching senior executives, you ask that before you get to that. Here's an example of a contract. This is their contract. For agencies, for corporations, what kind of stock should you be asking? Are they playing games with the verbiage as to when you're going to get your stock? And what type of stock is it? What kind of expense account do you have? What kind of healthcare program are you entitled to as a senior executive? Did they give you the mid-level one, or did they give you the senior executive one you don't know about? Secrets are gone. Privacy is dead. Transparency and accountability are here forever. And if you don't trust me, remember these words. I'm telling you, it's not going back to the way it was before. And I'm also telling senior executives about the pandemic and some of the crazy things that are coming out of their mouth about how their offices are going to be run, that we're going back to work. Lunacy. Trust me, we're not going back to 75 offices in 52 countries. They can't afford it. The footprint won't last. Your clients won't allow you to charge them in the way that you were before. They understand the paradigm themselves. They want more. They want senior executives. They don't want bait and switch. The world has changed. We're not going back to the way.
And I think for me, what's been really has been very interesting to see unfold is through the lockdown. Now there is this new, a renewed enthusiasm for working from home, and this is a new way of working going forward. And I think that a lot of organisations are quite excited by that. They're great, and let's do that. But I think one of the issues, I think it ties back to the importance of having people of colour or people with different backgrounds at some senior levels, is they don't realise there are going to be people who are going to be left behind through this transition with only just remote working. And it comes back to the leadership of an organisation, understanding their people, who they have, and really building those relationships to be able to be aware of, can we actually make this change? Is this a sustainable thing to keep our people and to ensure the best results for our employees, but also as a company? And I think that's something that needs to be strongly considered when people do decide to move forward with a new adapted way of working.
Well, think about what you just said. So let's use that as an example. Both diversity as well as virtual and remote work. So you start freeing up some of those board seats, right? You get executives of color in there. But guess what those executives of color are also going to say? We don't just want us here. We want younger people that understand the virtual world. We want people that understand technology. The average person sitting on the board is 60 or 70. And this isn't ageism. It's not because of your age. The data says that you're usually the biggest stick in the mud to change when it comes to technology and remote and virtual work and understanding people of color. All three. So what I'm telling executive search professionals who I'm talking to, who are friends, and also board members of corporations, influencers in government as well. You have to have experts on boards now who can raise their hand and say, I have 20 years experience working in the virtual world. I'm happy to be on that board. So at least educate. If the average person sitting on the board has never worked for a decade virtually, how is that helpful? That means you're guessing. That means you're going to make faulty, bad decisions in this area. That means your own heart for what you personally are used to and want is going to be an influencer. The same way, excuse me, in dealing with diversity issues. Then some people are saying, oh, well, we're going to go to some of the people who have worked in the industry in this area. Let me get this straight. I just told you that my data shows that HR person who's been in our industry for 30 years as a Black woman has not placed senior executives of color herself. And you're putting her on the board. What are you talking about? Why would you do that? You know how insulting that is? Well, Mike, but she's Black. I don't care that she's Black. I want someone that has a solution set that's going to work. There are other diversity experts external to our industry who have for years and years and years found senior executives for our clients, corporations. Why aren't you talking to them? Why don't you have the intestinal fortitude and honesty to ask your client, who will praise you, by the way, hey, who do you use? Man, you guys have what, 25% now? People of color, and you have in the teens a level of senior executives of color. Who are you using? We want to use that. Why would you not ask your client that? You don't think your client would praise you for doing that? You don't think they're feeling pressure through supplier diversity, which is another huge area which you're a part of, to do more of that? I'm telling agencies and firms, you not only have to start looking at your boards and bringing in senior executives of color, supplier diversity at every level, your numbers, if you're at 2 to 5%, you're at risk for a lawsuit. You got to get those numbers up to like 1/3 at least. What does that mean? What law firms do you use? What accounting firms do you use? What vendors of every kind do you use? Where do you get your food from? Who cleans your offices? Across the board. Who's your photographer? Who's your video unit that you have at external? You're also suffering with prejudice and racism in those areas too. And here's what anyone who's talking about a quota needs to hear. We're supposed to, ethically and morally, have relationships with and work in the communities of which we operate. Not just where you're headquartered, but if you're a global organization, where you're making your money. What services and products are you making money off of? All types of people in every continent in the world. And when you look at that data, your goal is to seek to mirror those socioeconomic demographics that are related to sales, right, of services and products at a minimum. So let me use the example of New York City, the capital of advertising, the capital of PR. We've got more Fortune 100 location headquarters here, and we got a population that's almost 3/4 people of color in New York City. 10 years ago, the census said we're at 68%. Would it be inappropriate for me to seek 68% or 70% of every board, of every position, of every intern, of every contract, of every vendor? No. Are we even asking for that? No. I'm asking to start for one senior executive of color to be hired into every agency and every corporation that's in our business. That'll be hundreds hired in less than 2 years. That's historic. But it's bottom line so minimal, it's ridiculous, and people still aren't agreeing to it. It's absurd. But if you read the research, and if you read what should be close to 3/4. What does that mean? That means New York City's been a majority minority city since the 90s. And there are other cities around the world like that.
Yep.
Many of them in the United States, but also external in other countries.
Yep.
But you don't want to hear that. That's too scary. That means your power is reduced. That means that you have to share. That means that you're going to see us as peers. When does that ever happen in history? It's happening now.
Yeah, and there's a really interesting question in the chat just around about the fear of saying the wrong thing. Obviously, when the Black Lives Matter really picked up after the murder, there was a real rush to get something out on social media. If that was a generic message, the black square, all these different things, which in some cases it was incredibly empty. But what about the senior white execs who feel a little bit afraid of coming out with something and not knowing if it's the right thing to say, and therefore they'll rather just not say anything, and therefore they get
Well, let's
attacked?
role play. Give me an example. We're at a meeting, we're colleagues, and you say, Mike, I feel in my heart, I want to say something. And we're about to walk in the meeting, and I say, practice on me. Go for it. I'll be your sounding board before you say it. Give me an example of what you might want to say that you might be fearful of.
Well, I think you would be referring to what you've done as an organization. So you'll be wanting to say, what's your current state of play? are we able to produce these numbers and take ownership for it, if they're good or bad, and then hopefully put some tangible things in place going forward. So I think there's also it's also careful to not just be talking about what you're going to be doing, but rather sometimes it's better to not say anything and just go do it and then announce it and communicate it. And I think I think that's what a few organisations that I know of. I've spoken to some colleagues, and they said that they quite deliberately haven't been saying much. They're rather trying to actually get things in place and to put things tangibly as real steps. So therefore, there's more substance.
That's bad. That part's bad. You see, because here's what we've heard. I just had a conversation with a strong white woman who's a friend for years, who's powerful in our industry. And she said, Mike, we want to get the culture right. We don't want to make mistakes. We need more time. But I know that she's a strong advocate for women's rights. Huge. In her industry, in her community. So I said, how's that going? And I changed the subject to that. She's looking at me like, why are you focused on that? I said, imagine I'm a man, black or white, who says, before you do anything, we really need more time for the culture to change, for there to be a culture that is accepting by white powerful men of more white women in leadership. And you're a CEO now, but there's only 2 in our profession at your level, and we just need more time. He said, I'm not waiting. We have the research, we have data, we know exactly what we want. We're not going to wait. For the civil rights movement, my forefathers, who I stand on the shoulders of today, who literally got killed for the right to vote, let alone asking for a job, just wanting to vote, that we've been fighting for since it's been in our Constitution and really our birthright since we've been here. Or having discussions that make people uncomfortable, like slavery and how that's at the root of everything. I had a discussion just 3 years ago with a major food company who wanted to do things in cities all over the country. And they thought it was easy as, we're going to do this and people are going to start eating more salads and have healthier, we're going to make sure they have access to vegetables. It's going to be great, Mike. And I said, do you know the history of slaves and what they were given? Mike, what the heck are you talking about? Why are you going back to that? Well, how many generations ago do you think that is? What if someone said their great-grandfather was a slave? And you threw scraps on the ground and said, make something of that. Then you wonder why that we've learned that your mind gets like an addiction to that type of food. And even when you want to change, it's hard. And then those recipes get passed down from family. So you got to know this history before you walk in there, because you do this history with other products and services, but because you don't understand it and it's fearful for you, you don't want to talk about it. These are the things you have to understand. And when you understand that and learn it and talk to someone, they smile because they say, wow, you see me. You understand some of my history. It's that deep. It's uncomfortable to talk about. So what I said to her is, do you know that black women told white women in the 70s with the gender issue, you were about to do about 20 things that were wrong, and they spoke up and said, don't do that, it's not going to work. Oh no, we really think we should do this. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. We're giving you our playbook from the civil rights movement from 10 years earlier. Listen to us. Let us have a seat at the table, and we will have more power. And when you talk to Gloria Steinem or other leaders of the women's movement in the United States, they said, that's true. We weren't listening at first, but when we came together like this, we started making change. So I say to her, what if when I'm not in the room, you advocate for me, and when you're not in the room, I advocate for you? You know how many conversations of men under their breath still treating women with disrespect that I'm in every day? I have a choice every time I put my head down and go, that's not me. Not about me, I'm not staying there. Too risky. Every time I say, because I see my wife or my mother or my sister in my face. Not just a white person, but any woman being disrespected. Don't do that around me. I'm not laughing. Oh, Mike, it was just a joke. Don't do it. Sometimes there's 25 powerful men in a room or on a phone. Wow, Mike, that was tense there for a minute. It's supposed to be. Supposed to wake all of us up and go, don't do that stuff here. What you do in your own home, I can't influence. But when I can influence that every single time. And don't be afraid to do it, because anyone who has a good moral compass and good ethics will value. And why do I believe that? I think it's so deep, it comes from God. That's how deep I think. That when you plant that seed, it's not you anymore. Something else takes over. Thanks for speaking up for me. Thanks for being there for me. One by one, in every confrontation, in every meeting, in every situation, with the right heart, and you practice it now so that when it happens, you go, I know what to do. You simply speak up from your heart and say, don't do that. And when it comes to mentoring and sponsorship and helping other people, you think as though it's your son or daughter or you. Okay, he's got the job. He's sitting in who's training him? I walk by his cube every day. He's alone. Who are his colleagues? Who are his friends? What's going on? You ask your boss, who's also his boss, hey, could Tommy come? Can he take notes in this meeting? That's how you help. And then Tommy says, you spoke up for me? You're never going to forget that. I didn't do anything for you, let me know. I was sitting in that queue for 3 months. They're going to give me a review in 3 more months, and I haven't even been trained. Do you know they haven't given me my job description yet? Those are the texts I get now. In ad firms and agencies and corp com divisions, if you're not used to embracing someone that's different than you, why would you assume that a boss is treating them equally or a colleague is treating them equally? Or when you go out to lunch and he's sitting there and you don't ask him, you want to come along? Or as a boss, you're about to do a trip, you say, hey, you're going to learn a lot, but you got to take notes. Is that all right? You're coming on this trip. Sometimes it's even, you can look at my files. I'm busy right now, but we'll have a discussion at the end of the day or tomorrow about what you read. Would you learn about a similar situation that you can now build on for our client? And if the answer is you don't do that for everybody else, you got Jackie Robinson sitting in your offices. We're still the first. What are you talking about? You have to do more, not less. That's the directive. We still have Jackie Robinsons. What do I mean by that? The first in their family that graduated from college. How do you know? You ask. First working in this division. First, you as a boss, manage it. You're responsible for that, for their success. And if you don't feed by giving them at least some of your attention, and what's in your mind transferred to their mind, of course they're going to fail. That's the responsibility. Treat them like family. Treat them like yourself.
Yeah.
What can I do? Think from that perspective.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think that's something to also consider, not just in our professional lives, but also just in our personal lives as well. Just caring for people more. And I just thought of, just before we finish up, I've been very interested to observe. I'm a big sports fan, so I've been particularly looking at the way that different sporting organisations are responding to the issue of inclusion and diversity and the Black Lives Matter protests as well. And one of the things I found very interesting was that recently the New York Knicks owner, he sent out an internal communications essentially saying that we don't want to be making any statement on this, which I think we all know the position he takes. So his view is not surprising, but as consumers, as fans, as people who buy these different products, how should we react to this sort of behavior, the lack of action? So not just people working for the organization, but actually us as viewers and consumers?
So as you know, I specialize in crisis PR. I work around the world, and in almost every sector of society I work in, and that includes sports and entertainment. The bread and butter is corporate. My background started in government. I also have government clients. So when it comes to sports, I know that leader's top communications person, and I know that leader's top marketing person for the organization. They have gotten texts from me that say, really want to help your organization and help your cause, you got to manage up quickly. Here's some of the data he needs to understand whether he likes it or not. New York City, as I said, is almost 3/4 people of color. You want your fan base to turn on you? Say things like that. Number two, this issue isn't going away in a couple of weeks. It's going to be around through 2021 at minimum, through the election and beyond. Because once we get a new president, people are going to be marching and protesting for the change that needs to happen with that new president as well. The pressure's not going to be let off just because of the election. Why does that impact sports? Your fan base is going to protest against you. You want a boycott of not just the Knicks, but of Madison Square Garden? They know you own more than the Knicks. Any concert, any food, anything that is attached to your name, they know the power comes from that type of a protest now. That could start as a fire today with one tweet on social media. Just one. Not worth it. Understand, and you're disrespecting your own players. Majority of them are black. Are you saying to them they don't matter? That's what's happening in the NFL right now with discussion. That's happening in baseball with discussion. That's happening with the Olympics with discussion. That's even happening with children's leagues. And photos being released as they're now getting back of being down on the knee, the entire team. It's not going away. The old rules are dead. The paradigm has shifted. And worse, if you're older and out of touch, people are going to ask you to go away, to be fired, to sell the team, to step down as an association head, to step down as a CEO. I'm not exaggerating when I give you that advice. That's what's on the table now.
And I know that there's huge work still to come, and yeah, there's a lot of things to move and to get things into place. But over these few weeks, are you feeling encouraged? Is this the most encouraging moment
Yes,
for you to date?
absolutely. The encouragement is don't stop. The encouragement is individual decisions matter. The encouragement is seeing whites and others marching alongside blacks. The encouragement is CEOs and powerful influencers, as well as civil rights groups and law firms. I'll be blunt. They're involved with what I'm doing. I'm not doing this alone. There are also some powerful white people that are saying, how can we help? I've even had a CEO say, you need to use my jet right there in Teterboro. It's a little too risky to go to JFK and LaGuardia. You can use my jet. Yeah. Who says things like that? People that know me, people that have helped, people that have had chips built. You save a CEO's butt or a corporation's butt with a board over the course of 25 years, you don't think I have some chips? There are good people that want to help. There are good people that are doing good things. There are good people who are listening more than they ever did before. That's the encouragement. And there's more organization and more coalitions coming together in different sectors, right? When law firms, civil rights leaders, government leaders, corporate leaders, agency leaders, of color and that are white say, how can we help? A beautiful thing. You can influence. You can make calls too. And I'm not talking about some middle level. It's a CEO getting a phone call from the civil rights organization. The CEO getting a phone call from a law firm. The CEO getting a phone call from a client. Very powerful. And that's happening too. So there are different strategies that are a part of my campaign, at least. I'm not the only one. A lot of people helping. I think we're going to see more agencies tip. I think we're going to see more corporations tip. I think there's going to be shareholders that also get involved. And there's going to be good pressure that's going to come to make lasting change. More soon.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, I always thought that I was someone who was pretty strong in my views on this issue. And I would, for years, I would occasionally tweet, make comment on different issues that I really care about. But what actually brought into light for me the last few weeks was actually I wasn't doing enough. And I myself was being really complacent, and that's actually not good enough at all. And I think that's how a lot of people feel, is that the movement over the last few weeks is spreading across the world. I know back home in Australia, it's brought a sharper focus on Indigenous Australians as well, which is also really ugly as well. And just, I think it's really stirring people into action, which I hope is long lasting. So, I just want to say, Mike, thank you so much for giving up your time today and to really shine light on these issues and give such an honest point of view. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I think everyone who's tuned in has really enjoyed it. And I think we could definitely have a completely different webinar on your days back in the intelligence. I reckon that would be an amazing conversation in itself. But let's just, once again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, Michael, I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's get to know each other a little better and be an example for those that are still on. You have a family?
So my family are all from Australia, in Melbourne. My mum was born in London, but my wife, she's from the US, in Los Angeles, a Mexican. So our 1-year-old son is he's also Mexican as well. So he's got a nice balance of sort of the upbringing and the culture, the richness, especially on his mum's side. A lot more interesting than my side. It's quite up and down. It's pretty basic, essentially. But yeah, I feel really fortunate, in particular because of my wife, because I've been exposed to far more just things to be aware of when it comes to the racial aspects and
Yes.
just little comments, and it's the subtle things that I've learned for myself. But I feel really quite lucky that I've been able to move country, live here in London, and be exposed to completely different people. And that's been really, really good for my personal development for me.
Well, I look forward to continuing our growing friendship.
Absolutely.
I would love for you to meet my family. And here's an example for everyone that's listening. If you have children, and they don't have to be mixed like our children. If you have children and you're concerned about what you should be doing with this issue, and you're white, black, Latino, Asian, mixed, immigrant, this is how you kickstart your heart. Close your eyes and see your child in your mind every single time issues like this come up. Trust me, you'll know what to do. This entire campaign got kicked into high gear because of my 3.5-year-old son. Every single issue, comment, this webinar, there's pictures in my head between my eyes and ears and heart every time now. And the measure is this: if we don't do this now for them, for my son to know your children, and for them to have a world that is much more equal than it is today, and for them to be seen as peers along with everybody else in the world, and we haven't done every single thing we can do to help them, shame on us. I don't care if you're white, black, Asian, Latino, doesn't matter. You haven't done enough. If you love your children, this is high EQ stuff that we as men usually stink at. Whether it's a woman being disrespected, whether it's being in a meeting and you have the ability to help her to be paid equally, whether it's you're in a room with 5 white guys again and you go, oh, no, this is wrong. What should I say? There's a way to say it with love. Guys, we can't do this anymore. We're going to get our head handed to us. Are we going to wait for a client to literally return a deck after we send who we are and they look us up to say, you can't do this. It's unacceptable. That's happening now from clients. You don't believe me? Start doing the research. I've done it. So be careful. Think from your kid's perspective. Open your heart. And I'll close with this. Everything we talked about is much more about heart work than head work. Heart work, EQ, thinking of others. One of the biggest tools that we have is the ability to think from another person's perspective, and we stink in it, or else we wouldn't have these problems. And if you learned racism and prejudice at home, you got a lot more work to do. And you know who you are, and you know what your struggles are. And if it comes out in work, trust me, there's going to be someone like me that's going to say, it's time for you to go. It's not tolerated anymore. If you're clearly racist and prejudiced, you've got to go. Period. Sitting on a board, running an organization, being in the way, making excuses. There's a million different subtleties to see it. But now we're speaking up.